Once upon a time, in my first year of high school, I was tasked with making a book. Yes, a school book project. A short children's book about something plant-related for my biology class. It wasn't something major, but I thought it would be fun to work on. So I decided to put way too much effort into it by illustrating a character and writing a story, all with a rhyme reminiscent of Cat in the Hat. I titled it Tùzi, which means rabbit in Chinese. I liked rabbits. The pages were printed out and I used some simple crafting skills to sew and glue together an actual hardcover book. My teacher didn't seem to be impressed. I'm aware it's hard to appreciate the small, insignificant efforts it takes to make art. Years later, it was now my 4th year, and all I had were small records of the book. My teacher never gave it back, and I accidentally lost most of the files. However, I remembered it vividly. I loved the effort I put into that book. I liked the cute character I made, and I liked rabbits. Unfortunately, Tùzi was set to collect dust in my brain. However, now I was tasked with another project, making anime figures. Yes, in my art class. Why? Who knows? I was stumped with ideas, and I needed an original character to make a figure of. Designing one would be rather hard. But then, I remembered back to my first year of high school. I had grown so much from then, and perhaps there was a pleasant way to express that. Today, we're making an anime figure of Tùzi, an original character based on the question, what would you do to save the last plant on Earth? It's a project filled with passion, love, and environmentalism. Who knew 3 years would take me from biology to an anime figure of a homeless bunny girl? And yet, here we are. It's definitely a ton to unpack with a bunch of unanswered questions, but if you're willing to hear such a story, I certainly won't be shy to tell. The idea of Tùzi stems from a fantasy idea based on environmentalism. It's very similar to WALL-E. Well, at least that's how it started. I created a character sheet of Tùzi for my book, but it felt rather bland. A simple brown cloak and white hair was pretty plain, basically a Chinese knockoff of WALL-E. So instead, I decided to add a bit more violence. I imagined a world where plants became a thing of the past, and demi-humans struggled to survive with whatever food sources they had. This would create a dangerous, post-apocalyptic world with hunting, scavenging, and desperation, which made the animalistic theme much more reasonable. I gave her a better outfit, sticking with the brown and gray color scheme. Keeping my head inside the world I was creating, I realized without plants, cloth and wood would be difficult to come by. That's why her outfit is rather simple, with wrapped bandages and a cloak which wouldn't have taken too much effort to fashion. Rips and repairs were added, as well as bone ornaments and metallic items to create a more dystopian feel. The pot was changed to a rusty bucket to have something more portable. I also gave her something to protect herself with, and I swear this was made before Puss in Boots too. At least my design expresses the theme of life a little bit better with the weapon. Keeping with the animal theme, I gave her big rabbit-like feet to better express the demi-human aspect rather than just ears. Now you can imagine an intense scene with a small agile character jumping around to protect life. Or maybe not. The character has transformed into something a bit more interesting. It would make a cool movie, wouldn't it? My only regret with this design may be that she looks a bit older than originally planned. I wanted her to be a crazy young fighter with a redemption arc like Violet Evergarden or Vinland Saga. However, this does work. Next was making the anime figure, which will be a very similar process to my other video. They were both made for the same project after all, as well as 3 more, which will eventually get their own videos. If you want to see more, be sure to support these videos. It really helps motivate me to continue making anime figures and characters like no one else on YouTube. Now, continuing on to the story. To make an anime figure, I 3D model it, and then I 3D print it. It's modern sculpture, bringing imagination to life. I use Blender for all of this, and from your point of view, it might seem like insanity. Thanks. It keeps me sane to know I'm insane. To make the figure, I use an anime girl model I stole from somewhere as a base. I wouldn't want to 3D model one from scratch. That's not insanity, that's just stupid. This simplifies everything, and when you put a rig on it, you can easily pose the base and make an anime figure without clothes. Using simple modeling skills, I model the ears, cloak, and hair. It looks a lot like me in 10 years. Some elements, such as the goggles or backpack, are just imported assets that were just edited to fit the character. This saves a huge amount of time modeling, and all these assets were sourced from Sketchfab. I recommend checking out the website for useful 3D models, and mine are even on there as well. Of course, some assets had to be modeled by me. That includes the unique bunny shoes. Her feet are huge. I mean, I did my research. When all the clothing elements were added, I rigged the character in order to pose it along with her outfit. I decided on a quick base and posed her simply standing on some rocks. I couldn't think of any other pose that could involve the plant in the bucket, so I decided to keep it simple. Oh, and I remembered, while I was doing this, I was working on college essays too. How funny. With that, the figure is 70% done. All that's left was detailing. This is done last because it's hard to adjust a model once details are added. I wanted to make sure the pose would be good and the proportions were accurate. The base was further developed by adding a ton of assets that I thought would fit the scene. This included cinder blocks, gas cans, and a skull. Then parts of the character were detailed. For example, the shoes had grooves, stitches, and a shoelace added. In my last figure in this series, I printed the model in too many pieces, which is supposed to help with painting, but instead it made nasty gaps. I improved this model by simply keeping them together. No one would see much of the legs anyways, since the clothes covers it. In fact, I modeled the pants very lazily since no one would look up her dress anyways. Right? As you can see here, I modeled the scythe from scratch from a literal vector image. I wanted the weapon to have a bone handle with some grip and a rusty blade. The plant too was from scratch. It was my first time trying to model something so organic, but it turned out to be super easy. The larger concern was if I could even print this thing. It's so thin. The last step was adding in pegs to assemble the model. This ensures you can align the model properly, like a puzzle. This figure was rather simple, with only 7 pieces as compared to Lillipop with, oh my god. Printing was a little trickier though, because printing bigger pieces means if you fail, you gotta throw the whole thing away. I had to print the whole body a couple times since the first time it had some details lost. I print my figures outside now, and it's the most impoverished resin printing setup in the world. However, it gets the job done. Soon, it would be time to paint. A couple days later, I found myself in Panera with my anime figure. Why? Well, I wanted to do some schoolwork with my friends, and this is my schoolwork. But no one really cares what you're doing there, so sanding and touch-ups were done first to ensure the model looked good and fit together. Tragically, this model suffered several fitting issues, the hair and arms primarily, as the pegs inside the sleeves didn't print well. And the hair, well, it just didn't fit together even after tons of shaving and sanding. Luckily, I think I fixed the issue for those who want to download the model in the future, which you can do on my Etsy shop. For this model, I wanted to try experimenting with something new. Usually when I print my figures, it's hard to see surface details because the resin is semi-clear and rather dark. I figured by painting the model lightly with some white, it would allow me to see the model better and fix any imperfections. So it's a lot like a primer layer. I should just buy primer, huh? Amazingly, Panera didn't kick me out despite creating a mess and having a knife, but I soon moved back to my same old desk. Sometimes I kinda dislike my desk because of how orange it looks on camera. I would rather have some nice, dark wood, but apparently not. I began with very thinned out paints to get a smooth coverage. The great thing about this model is that it's just brown for days, and it's easy to color match when you're just using one tone. You can see the coverage is very uneven. I paint like this to emulate a canvas painting where you constantly add new strokes or paint to make a piece of art. I also do a bit of shading here and there with darker and lighter shades. This is very unlike the professional anime figure painting style where airbrushes and masking tape are used to make perfect gradients and smooth coverage. I feel like that is a bit too much work for me, and I want to find a more grounded style of my own that allows me to be more free and capture a more gritty feel on the figure. In that way, I also don't like painting figures too much when they're separate. I need a solid thing to hold on to, so I began assembling it. Prints aren't always perfect though, and hopefully I'll improve on the designing aspect of anime figures in the future. Painting the eyes was and always will be a challenge. It's so small that even my own eyes strain from focusing on eyes. It's not encouraging when they look like crap too. I found it was just too unstable to hold the figure, so I decided it was time to make the base. Well, it doesn't always work out and you lose a bit of money, but there is no other choice but to press on. The base was beautiful, but did fail to print this little edge. Luckily, you can always fix it with some putty instead of reprinting it. Using a stick and some actual rocks, you can actually get some great stone textures. Now I can add some real detail. Fake shading is the best way to make a figure pop. You can do it with a precise brush or with watered down paints. I got tired of painting for hours and hours, especially with poor lighting, so I decided to get a new lamp. This lamp by Novus Big is perfect for any hobbycraft enthusiast. It's adjustable and even has a magnifying glass for tiny details such as eyes. You can adjust the brightness along with the temperature, and it's genuinely been quite a useful tool for this project. Using this super precise brush and the lamp, I take some time to shape up the eyes. Having good lighting is necessary for small miniature crafts, and it's also probably better for your eye health. Not to mention, it also makes the video much prettier. If you want this lamp, you can give it a look in the description below. Painting rocks is something very fun. You get to go crazy with dry brushing and colors. It reminds me of my days making cardboard tanks. I attempted to follow this reference, and you can see how the sunlight adds some orange to the rocks, while the sky adds some blues to the shadows. And it's these types of details that I try to incorporate into the model to add some extra realism. The last steps were adding a varnish layer to protect the paint, as well as a few bits of resin for the goggles and eyes. UV resin is great for this because of its glass-like properties, and plus it cures in the sun. And with that, the figure is finished. Despite the long journey it took to make this figure, spanning years and hours of work, it will most likely be forgotten. In a lonely, deserted world, very few people will care about the things you do. The story of Tùzi and the story of how she was made is a lonely one, but perhaps that's okay. Ultimately, it's up to you to care for you and the things you love. Whether that's in a post-apocalyptic furry world, or at some park with your dog. If you want to download this model, check the link in the description below. Thank you for watching, and be sure to make some more fun.